If you've ever noticed that the smallest tasks can feel like the hardest to begin, you're not alone. It's strange, isn't it? The email that would take 3 minutes, the message you've already drafted in your head, the form you filled out a dozen times before. None of it is complicated, none of it is new, and yet you sit there, aware of it, circling it, postponing it. You tell yourself it's simple, that makes it worse. Because if it's simple, then why can't you just do it? This is the quiet tension that builds around starting. Not dramatic, not visible, just you, fully conscious of what needs to happen and somehow unable to make the first move. From the outside, it looks like procrastination. From the inside, it feels like standing at the edge of something that shouldn't feel steep, but does. You're not confused. You know the steps. You've done this before. You might even care deeply about the outcome. That's what makes it so frustrating. There's no lack of understanding. There's no lack of desire. There's just hesitation. And the more you notice the hesitation, the heavier it becomes. You might start asking yourself familiar questions. Why am I avoiding this? What's wrong with me? Why does this feel so hard? The task hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. Because somewhere along the way, starting stopped being neutral. It began to carry meaning. When a task feels small, you expect yourself to glide into it. So when you don't, the gap between expectation and reality becomes uncomfortable. That discomfort turns into pressure, and pressure changes the atmosphere. Now it's not just about sending the email, it's about proving you're responsible. It's about showing you're competent. It's about not disappointing yourself again. A simple action becomes loaded. The moment you sit down to begin, you're not just facing the task, you're facing what it represents. If you don't start, you're frustrated. If you start and it's mediocre, you're exposed. If you delay again, you reinforce a story about yourself. That's a lot to hold for something that should take 5 minutes. And when something carries that much weight, it's not surprising that your body hesitates. This is the lens to focus on. Starting feels heavy when the task is carrying more than just itself. It's easy to assume the problem is discipline, that you just need to be firmer with yourself, more structured, more intense. But intensity often makes the weight worse. It adds another layer of expectation to something already overloaded.
You might picture how long it will take, how tired you'll feel, how imperfect it might be. You might even imagine the relief of having it done and then feel the distance between now and that relief. So instead of taking one small action, you hold the entire arc of the task in your head. That's exhausting. No wonder you hesitate. The hesitation isn't about laziness, it's about the invisible expansion of the task. It starts as write the email. It turns into handle the situation perfectly. It turns into prove you're competent. It turns into don't mess this up again. That's a lot to carry before typing a single word. And when something feels that heavy, your body responds in a predictable way. It slows down. You might distract yourself, not because you don't care, but because distraction feels lighter. It has no symbolic meaning attached to it. There's no risk in scrolling, no exposure in reorganizing a folder, no judgment in reading something unrelated. Those actions feel safe. The task feels charged. The more charged it feels, the more you try to reason with yourself. It's not that serious. Just do it. Stop being dramatic. But reasoning doesn't remove weight. It often adds another layer of frustration. Now you're not just hesitant, you're annoyed at yourself for being hesitant. And that annoyance tightens things further. What shifts this pattern isn't force, it's understanding the weight. Instead of asking, why can't I start, it can be more honest to ask, what is this carrying for me right now? Is it fear of doing it badly? Is it exhaustion from previous effort? Is it the pressure to prove something? Is it the worry that if you begin, you'll have to sustain energy you don't have? When you name what the task represents, it becomes less abstract, less looming.
because often the paralysis isn't about the action itself, it's about what the action might reveal. There's also something subtle about staying still. When you don't start, everything remains possible. The task is still perfect in theory. The outcome is still undefined. You haven't risked anything yet. Starting makes it real. Real things can disappoint. Remaining inactive preserves potential. It keeps you safe from seeing whether your effort matches your standards. That safety is tempting, but it also keeps you stuck. This is the quiet tension beneath many moments of hesitation: safety versus reality. If you've been burned out or stretched thin for a long time, this tension can intensify. When you're depleted, even neutral tasks can feel threatening, not because they're difficult, but because they require energy you're unsure you have. So your system conserves. It waits. It holds back until the task feels lighter or the urgency becomes unavoidable. And when urgency finally forces movement, you might perform well. You might even surprise yourself, which makes the earlier hesitation even more confusing. But urgency removes space. It narrows the path. It reduces room for self-evaluation. It turns the task into something immediate and defined. In those moments, there's no time to overthink. When you understand this, the pattern becomes less mysterious. Starting feels hardest when the task is surrounded by meaning, expectation, and self-judgment. It feels easier when the task is concrete and contained. So the shift isn't about becoming more disciplined, it's about reducing the meaning you're attaching to the first step. Not by pretending it doesn't matter, but by separating the action from the story. Writing the email is not the same as proving your worth. Submitting the application is not the same as determining your future. Beginning the project is not the same as promising perfection. When those lines blur, hesitation grows. When they separate, movement becomes simpler. This doesn't require an elaborate system, it requires a quieter internal stance. The next time you notice yourself circling a small task, pause before attacking yourself. Notice the narrative building around it. Notice how much you're asking that first step to carry. Then, see if you can let it carry less. Not less responsibility, less identity. Because the task is just a task, it is not a verdict. You are allowed to begin imperfectly. You are allowed to begin without proving anything. You are allowed to take one step without committing to the entire journey. And when the first step is no longer loaded with meaning, it often becomes lighter. Not effortless, but lighter. Sometimes that small shift in perception is enough to move you forward. Not because you forced yourself, but because you stopped asking the beginning to hold the weight of everything. Starting was never about willpower, it was about what you were asking that moment to represent. When you reduce that weight even slightly, the door opens more easily, and movement, quiet, ordinary movement, becomes possible again.